At a crowded train station, a single father is rushing to the most important job interview of his life. Suddenly, he sees an elderly woman collapse from a heart attack while the crowd coldly looks away. Caught between his future and a human life, he lets the fateful train go and rushes to save her. What he doesn't know is that the woman is a powerful billionaire, and this one choice will change his life forever. Before we dive deeper into today's story, I know many of us are looking for simple, natural ways to stay active and strong. That's why I'd like to introduce you to Shilajit Essential Extract. If you'd like to check it out, just use the link in the description, or scan the QR code right here on your screen. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead as Marcus Thompson counted the crumpled bills in his calloused hands, $28.50. He stared at the pathetic pile of cash, his jaw tightening as reality hit him like a sledgehammer. 6 hours of overtime welding ship hulls in the Brooklyn shipyard, and this was all he had to show for it. Another great day in paradise, he muttered, shoving the money into his worn leather wallet. The locker room was empty except for the lingering smell of industrial soap and the echo of his footsteps on concrete. Marcus pulled his phone from his pocket and checked the time. 3:47 p.m. His heart started racing. The interview was at 5:30, and he needed to catch the 4:15 train from Penn Station to make it on time. His phone buzzed with a text from Zara. "Dad, how did work go today? Did you get overtime pay?" Marcus stared at the message, his chest tightening. How could he tell his 16-year-old daughter that 6 hours of back-breaking labor barely covered their subway rides for the week? He typed back quickly. "Good day, sweetheart. How's homework going?" The response came immediately. "Using my phone flashlight again. The electric company called 3 times today." Marcus closed his eyes and pressed his forehead against the cold metal locker. The electricity had been shut off 2 days ago. He told Zara it was just a temporary maintenance issue from the city. She was too smart to believe him, but she played along anyway. That's what killed him the most, watching his brilliant daughter pretend their poverty wasn't slowly crushing both their dreams. He walked out into the gray October afternoon, his work boots heavy on the cracked sidewalk. The train ride to Penn Station gave him 37 minutes to rehearse what he'd say to the hiring manager at Harrison Industries. 37 minutes to convince himself that this time would be different. This time they wouldn't take one look at his zip code, his name, his weathered hands and decide he wasn't the right cultural fit. The subway car lurched and swayed, filled with the usual mix of commuters heading home and service workers starting their evening shifts. Marcus pulled out the wrinkled job posting he'd printed at the public library. Lead Supervisor Manufacturing Division. Starting salary $78,000 annually. The numbers still seemed impossibly high. It was more money than he'd made in any single year of his life. His phone rang. Unknown number. "Hello, Mr. Thompson. This is Jennifer Collins from Harrison Industries. I'm calling about your interview scheduled for today." Marcus gripped the phone tighter. "Yes, ma'am. I'll be there at 5:30 sharp. Actually, that's why I'm calling. We've had a last-minute change. Would you be able to come in at 4:45 instead? I know it's short notice, but Mr. Harrison himself wanted to sit in on the interview." Marcus looked at his watch. 4:12 p.m. "Absolutely. I can make that work." "Wonderful. Oh, and Mr. Thompson, just so you know, this position has generated a lot of interest. We've narrowed it down to 3 candidates, and this final interview will determine who gets the job. Good luck." The line went dead. Marcus stared at the phone, his pulse hammering in his temples. This was it. 18 years of back-breaking labor, night shifts and weekend overtime had led to this moment. If he got this job, Zara could apply to real colleges instead of just community college. They could move out of their studio apartment. She wouldn't have to do homework by phone light anymore. The train pulled into Penn Station at 4:17 p.m. Marcus shouldered his way through the crowd, clutching the manila folder that contained his resume, references and every hope he had left. The main concourse was chaos, thousands of people rushing in every direction, announcements echoing off the vaulted ceiling, the smell of food and exhaust and human urgency. He checked the departure board. Track 12, departing at 4:32. Perfect timing. As he headed toward the platform, Marcus caught his reflection in a shop window. His shirt was pressed but showed its age. His shoes were polished but couldn't hide the cracks in the leather. He looked like exactly what he was, a working man trying to climb a ladder that seemed to get taller with every rung. "You got this," he whispered to himself. "You got this, Marcus." But deep in his chest that familiar weight was settling in. The same weight he'd carried for 18 years. The weight of knowing that no matter how hard he worked, no matter how much he deserved a break, the world had a way of keeping men like him exactly where they were. He quickened his pace toward track 12, unaware that in less than 3 minutes, everything he thought he knew about justice, kindness, and second chances was about to change forever. The platform buzzed with afternoon commuters, everyone focused on their phones or their destinations. Marcus weaved through the crowd, checking his watch obsessively. 4:29 p.m. 3 minutes to spare. That's when he saw her. An elderly white woman sat on the wooden bench near track 12, completely motionless while chaos swirled around her. Her silver hair was perfectly styled, and she wore an expensive-looking navy coat, but something was wrong. Very wrong. Her eyes stared straight ahead, unfocused, and her hands gripped a leather portfolio so tightly her knuckles had gone white. Marcus slowed his pace. The woman's lips were moving silently, repeating what sounded like track 7, as if she was trying to remember something crucial. A businessman in a $1,000 suit walked right past her, talking loudly into his Bluetooth headset. A group of teenagers laughed as they pushed by, not even glancing in her direction. She was clearly lost, sitting at track 12 when she needed to be somewhere else entirely. All aboard track 12, final boarding call for the 432 to Midtown. Marcus's head snapped toward the train. The conductor was already closing doors at the far end. He had maybe 90 seconds before his last chance at a real future pulled away from the platform. He looked back at the woman. Her breathing seemed shallow, labored. One of her hands had moved to her chest. "Ma'am," Marcus called out, but his voice was lost in the noise of the station. 80 seconds. The woman tried to stand, swaying dangerously. The portfolio slipped from her lap, spilling papers across the concrete. Marcus could see official letterhead, Whitman Foundation, scattered at her feet. "Ma'am, are you okay?" He stepped closer. She looked up at him with confused, frightened eyes. "I was supposed to catch the train to Grand Central, meeting my financial advisor about the foundation's quarterly review." Her voice was cultured, educated, but trembling with uncertainty. "But I got confused. Track 7, or was it track 12? I can't remember where I'm supposed to be." 60 seconds. Marcus glanced at the train, then back at the woman. She was pressing her hand to her chest more firmly now, her face pale and drawn. "Please," she whispered, the word barely audible. "I think something's wrong." 40 seconds. Every instinct in Marcus's body screamed at him to run. This was his shot. His one chance to lift his family out of poverty. Zara's future hung in the balance. The interview that could change everything was waiting 30 minutes away. But looking at Eleanor's pale face, Marcus saw something that cut through all his desperation. He saw his own mother, who had died alone in a hospital while he was working a double shift he couldn't afford to miss. He saw every elderly person who'd ever been invisible, ignored, discarded by a world that only noticed you if you were young, powerful, or profitable. 20 seconds. Hey, stay with me." Marcus dropped his folder and knelt beside the bench. His resume scattered in the wind, pages fluttering toward the train tracks. 10 seconds. Eleanor's eyes rolled back, and she slumped forward, completely unconscious. The conductor's whistle pierced the air. Marcus looked over his shoulder as the train began to move, carrying away his last hope of escape from the cycle of poverty that had trapped his family for generations. Ma'am. Marcus caught her before she could fall to the ground, his folder scattered in the wind as pages fluttered toward the train tracks. As the train disappeared into the tunnel, Marcus pulled out his phone with shaking hands. He dialed 911, watching his future fade into darkness while he made the hardest choice of his life. 911, what's your emergency? I'm at Penn Station, track 12. An elderly woman just collapsed, she's unconscious but breathing. While he spoke to the dispatcher, Marcus gently laid Eleanor back against the bench, checking her pulse. Her expensive purse had fallen open, spilling its contents. Among the scattered items, he could see a driver's license that read Eleanor Whitman and several business cards with Whitman Foundation printed in elegant script. "Sir, can you describe her symptoms?" the dispatcher asked. As Marcus answered the questions, he wondered if he'd just made the biggest mistake of his life, or if, somehow, he'd finally done something right. The paramedics arrived 7 minutes later, but it felt like a lifetime. 7 minutes of watching Eleanor remain unconscious, her breathing shallow but steady. 7 minutes of knowing that somewhere across town, 3 candidates were interviewing for a job that was no longer his to win. 7 minutes of wondering what the hell he was going to tell Zara. The ride to Mount Sinai Hospital passed in a blur of sirens and medical equipment. Eleanor's condition had stabilized, but she remained confused, clinging to Marcus's hand like he was the only solid thing in a world that had suddenly stopped making sense. "You don't have to stay," she kept repeating. "You must have somewhere important to be." Marcus just squeezed her hand tighter. "I'm not going anywhere." At the hospital, everything changed. The moment they wheeled Eleanor through the emergency room doors, a security guard stepped in front of Marcus. "Excuse me, sir, are you family?" "No, I'm the one who found her. I rode with her in the ambulance." The guard looked Marcus up and down, taking in his work clothes, his calloused hands, his zip code written in every line of his weathered face. "I'm going to need to see some ID. What's your relationship to Mrs. Whitman?" "I told you, I found her at Penn Station. She was having chest pains." "Sir, I'm going to need you to wait in the main lobby while we sort this out." Marcus felt heat rising in his chest. "Sort what out? I just want to make sure she's okay." "Sir, please don't raise your voice. Security protocols require." "Marcus," Eleanor's voice cut through the tension. She was sitting up on the gurney, looking much more alert than she had at the station. "Where are you taking him?" The security guard's demeanor shifted instantly. "Mrs. Whitman, this gentleman claims he brought you here. We're just verifying he saved my life." Eleanor's voice carried an authority that made everyone in the vicinity stop and listen. "I want him with me." 20 minutes later, Marcus sat in Eleanor's private room, still trying to process what he'd learned. The confused, frightened woman he'd found at Penn Station was Eleanor Whitman. Not just any Eleanor Whitman, but the Eleanor Whitman founder and former CEO of Whitman Industries, one of the largest manufacturing conglomerates on the East Coast. "I have early-stage dementia," Eleanor explained, her voice steady now that her medications had been adjusted. "Some days are better than others. Today was not a good day." Marcus nodded, though he was still struggling to reconcile the vulnerable woman he'd helped with the corporate powerhouse sitting before him. "The meeting I kept mentioning, it was with my financial advisor. We were supposed to discuss my investment portfolio." Eleanor paused, studying Marcus's face carefully. "Tell me about this train you missed." Something in her tone made Marcus's stomach drop. "It's not important, Marcus." The way she said his name reminded him of his mother when she knew he was hiding something. "Please," he found himself telling her everything, about Zara doing homework by phone light, about the 18 years of overtime shifts and broken promises, about the interview at Harrison Industries that was supposed to change everything. Eleanor listened in complete silence, her expression growing more troubled with each detail. "Harrison Industries," she repeated when he finished. "Yes, ma'am, manufacturing division. It was a long shot anyway." Eleanor was quiet for a long time, staring out the hospital window at the Manhattan skyline. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. "Marcus, I need to tell you something. Harrison Industries, I'm their largest single investor. I own 42% of the company." The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. He gripped the arms of his chair, the room suddenly spinning around him. "You own..." He couldn't finish the sentence. "When my husband died 5 years ago, I inherited his business interests. Harrison was one of his acquisitions." Eleanor turned to face him, her eyes filled with something that looked like shame. "Marcus, you sacrificed your future to save the life of someone who could have made one phone call and guaranteed you that job." Marcus stood up abruptly, pacing to the window. His reflection stared back at him. A man who just learned that fate had played the cruelest joke imaginable. He struggled for words. "This is unbelievable." His phone rang. The caller ID showed Harrison Industries. With Eleanor watching, Marcus answered. "Hello, Mr. Thompson. This is Jennifer Collins. I'm calling about your missed interview this afternoon." Marcus closed his eyes. "Yes, ma'am, I had a medical emergency. I understand these things happen, but unfortunately we've already made our decision. The position has been filled. I'm sorry." The line went dead. Marcus stared at the phone, then at Eleanor, who had heard every word. "They filled the position," he said quietly. Eleanor's face flushed with anger. "They what?" "It's fine. It's It's fine. But Marcus's voice cracked on the words. 18 years of hope had just died in a sterile hospital room, killed by an act of kindness toward the very person who could have prevented it all. No, Eleanor said firmly. It's not fine. Not even close to fine. She reached for the phone on her bedside table, but Marcus stopped her. Please don't. I don't want your charity. This isn't charity, Marcus. This is justice. Eleanor's eyes blazed with determination. And I'm going to make sure you get it. But as Marcus looked at this powerful woman who'd just discovered the cost of his kindness, he wondered if there was any justice in the world at all. Or if good deeds were just another luxury that men like him couldn't afford. Marcus's apartment building looked even more depressing than usual in the gray evening light. The broken buzzer, the graffitied walls, the smell of garbage and defeat that seemed to seep from every brick as it all felt heavier now, more suffocating. He climbed the 3 flights of stairs slowly, each step weighted with the knowledge that he'd just thrown away his family's future. Zara was waiting for him at their tiny kitchen table, textbooks spread around her like she was building a fort of knowledge against the world. She looked up when he walked in, her eyes bright with anticipation. Dad, how did it go? Did you get the job? Marcus set his keys on the counter, avoiding her gaze. The interview got postponed. Postponed. That's okay, right? They'll reschedule. The hope in her voice was like a knife twisting in his chest. Yeah, baby. They'll reschedule. Zara grinned and went back to her homework, scribbling notes by the light of her phone flashlight. Marcus watched her for a moment. This brilliant girl who deserved so much more than what he could give her. She was working on calculus, advanced placement calculus that she was taking as a junior because she was smart enough to skip ahead. Smart enough for MIT or Harvard or any school that would give her a chance. His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Marcus, this is Eleanor. I hope you made it home safely. We need to talk tomorrow. This isn't over. He deleted the message and tried to push Eleanor Whitman out of his mind. What was done, but sleep wouldn't come. Marcus lay on the pull-out couch that served as his bed, staring at the ceiling and listening to Zara breathe softly in the single bedroom they shared. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw that train pulling away from the platform. He saw his resume pages scattered on the concrete. He saw 18 years of hope dying in a hospital room. At 3 a.m. he gave up trying to sleep and sat at the kitchen table with a beer and a calculator. The math was simple and brutal. Rent was due in 5 days. The electric bill needed to be paid if Zara was going to do homework by actual light again. Food, subway cards, her SAT prep books, it all added up to more than he made in a month at the shipyard. He was so lost in the numbers that he almost missed the envelope that had been slipped under their door. His name was written on the outside in elegant handwriting. Inside was a check for $5,000 and a note: please don't see this as charity. See it as an apology. E.W. Marcus stared at the check, his hands shaking. $5,000 would solve their immediate problems, but it would also confirm everything he'd always feared about himself, that he was the kind of man who needed rich white women to rescue him from his own life. He tore the check in half. The next morning brought a phone call that made everything worse. Mr. Thompson, this is Dean Morrison from City College. I'm calling about your daughter Zara's scholarship application. Marcus's heart leaped. Zara had applied for a full academic scholarship to the engineering program. She'd been checking the mail obsessively for weeks. Yes, sir. I'm sorry to tell you that Zara was not selected for this year's scholarship program. The competition was extremely fierce. I understand. Marcus's voice sounded hollow even to himself. Thank you for calling. However, I want you to know that Zara's application was exceptional. Her grades, her test scores, her essay, everything was outstanding. In a different year with different funding levels, I said I understand. Marcus hung up and sat in silence for a long time. When Zara got home from school, she found the rejection letter that had arrived in the afternoon mail. She read it twice, then folded it carefully and set it aside. It's okay, Dad, she said quietly. Community college is fine. I can transfer later. But Marcus saw the way her shoulders sagged. He saw the dream dying in her eyes, the same way his own dreams had died in that hospital room. That evening, Eleanor called. Marcus, I've been making some calls about Harrison Industries. There are things you need to know. I don't want to hear it. The man they hired instead of you, his father is on their board of directors. Marcus closed his eyes. Eleanor, please, just let it go. His qualifications are half of yours. He's never worked a day in manufacturing, but his last name opens doors that yours apparently doesn't. What do you want me to say? That the system is rigged? I already knew that. I want you to let me fix this. You can't fix 18 years of being the wrong color in the wrong neighborhoods. You can't fix a world that looks at men like me and sees a threat instead of a father trying to do right by his daughter. Eleanor was quiet for a long time. When she spoke again, her voice was different, harder, more determined. You're right, I can't fix 18 years of injustice. But I can make sure it doesn't continue for another day. What does that mean? It means tomorrow, I'm paying a visit to Harrison Industries. And by the time I'm done with them, they're going to understand that there are consequences for treating good men like disposable parts. Marcus wanted to tell her not to bother. He wanted to hang up and pretend that powerful people like Eleanor Whitman didn't exist in his world. But as he watched Zara doing homework by phone light again, something hard and angry unfurled in his chest. Maybe it was time to let someone else fight his battles. Maybe it was time to see what justice looked like when it wore expensive clothes and carried checkbooks instead of lunch pails. Okay, he said quietly. Do what you think is right. I will, Eleanor replied. And Marcus, what you did yesterday, saving a stranger at the cost of your own dreams. That's the kind of character they should be looking for in their leaders. Tomorrow I'm going to make sure they know it. Eleanor Whitman didn't make appointments. She arrived at Harrison Industries at 8:30 a.m. sharp, walked past the receptionist like she owned the building, which in a very real sense she did, and took the elevator straight to the executive floor. Marcus wasn't there to see it, but he would hear about it later from Jennifer Collins, who called him 3 hours after Eleanor's visit with a voice that shook with barely controlled panic. Mr. Thompson, this is Jennifer from Harrison Industries. I think we need to talk. Eleanor had spent the previous evening doing what she did best, gathering information, phone calls to board members, conversations with old business associates, a thorough review of Harrison Industries' hiring practices over the past 5 years. What she found confirmed every suspicion that Marcus's story had planted in her mind. In 5 years, Harrison Industries had hired 47 people for supervisory positions. 45 of them were white men. The 2 exceptions were white women hired for HR roles that paid significantly less than their male counterparts. Mr. Harrison, Eleanor had said, settling into the leather chair across from the CEO's desk without being invited to sit. We need to discuss your hiring practices. Robert Harrison was 62 years old with the kind of confident smile that came from a lifetime of never being told no. Mrs. Whitman, what a pleasant surprise. To what do I owe the honor? Yesterday, you failed to hire the most qualified candidate for your lead supervisor position. Instead, you hired the son of one of your board members, a young man whose only manufacturing experience consists of a summer internship at his father's company. Harrison's smile faltered slightly. Our hiring decisions are based on comprehensive evaluations of each candidate's potential. Potential. Eleanor let the word hang in the air like a bad smell. Tell me, what potential did you see in Marcus Thompson's application? I'm not sure I recall that particular candidate. 18 years of experience, perfect safety record, recommendations from 3 supervisors, night school completion in industrial management. But he missed his interview because he was saving my life at Penn Station. The color drained from Harrison's face. He was helping you. He sacrificed his future to help a stranger having a medical emergency. That's the kind of character you passed over in favor of nepotism. Harrison shifted in his chair, suddenly looking much less comfortable. Mrs. Whitman, I appreciate your concern, but your hiring process is discriminatory and illegal. I've spent the morning reviewing 5 years of your employment records. The pattern is clear, documented, and actionable. Eleanor opened her briefcase and placed a thick folder on Harrison's desk. This contains evidence of systematic discrimination in your hiring practices. It also contains my formal notice that I'm withdrawing my investment from your company. 42% of your operating capital. Harrison went pale. Eleanor, surely we can discuss this. We are discussing it. Here are your options. You can implement immediate changes to your hiring practices, starting with offering Marcus Thompson a position commensurate with his qualifications. Or I can withdraw my investment and share this documentation with the Department of Labor, the EEOC, and every business reporter in New York City. That's corporate blackmail. Eleanor smiled coldly. No, Robert, that's consequences. The phone call came to Marcus at 11:47 a.m. while he was welding supports on a cargo ship hull. His supervisor wasn't happy about the interruption, but he handed over the phone anyway. Mr. Thompson, this is Robert Harrison from Harrison Industries. I believe we owe you an apology and a conversation about your future with our company. Marcus set down his welding torch and stepped away from his workstation. I'm sorry, there was a misunderstanding yesterday regarding your interview. We'd like to offer you a position as Director of Operations. It's a newly created role that comes with a starting salary of $95,000 annually, plus full benefits and profit sharing. Marcus sat down heavily on a nearby crate. Director of Operations. You'd be overseeing 3 manufacturing divisions and implementing new safety and efficiency protocols. Your experience and character are exactly what we need in leadership. 20 minutes later, Marcus called Eleanor from his car in the shipyard parking lot. What did you do? I had a conversation about fairness and consequences. Her voice carried satisfaction. Sometimes people need to be reminded that good character matters more than good connections. Eleanor, I can't take a job just because you threaten someone. You're not taking a job because I threatened someone. You're taking a job because you're qualified for it, and because yesterday you proved that you're the kind of man who puts doing right above personal gain. That's exactly the kind of leadership Harrison Industries needs. Marcus was quiet for a long time, watching his former co-workers trudge toward the shipyard entrance for the afternoon shift. There's more, Eleanor continued. I'd like to establish a scholarship program through my foundation. The Marcus Thompson Educational Initiative, full 4-year scholarships for children of working families. Zara would be our first recipient. Eleanor, this isn't charity, Marcus, this is investment. Investment in people who understand that hard work and good character matter more than family connections or zip codes. That evening, Marcus sat at his kitchen table with Zara, watching her read the official scholarship letter from the Whitman Foundation. Her hands shook as she read the words full 4-year scholarship and any accredited university of your choosing. Dad, she whispered, tears streaming down her face. This is real. I can really go to MIT. Yeah, baby. It's real. She threw her arms around him, and for the first time in 18 years, Marcus Thompson felt like the father he'd always wanted to be. 6 months later, Marcus stood in his new office on the 15th floor of Harrison Industries, looking out at the city skyline. The company's safety record had improved by 30% under his leadership. Workplace incidents were down 60%. And they'd hired 12 new supervisors, 8 of them from backgrounds that looked nothing like the old Harrison Industries hiring profile. His phone buzzed with a text from Zara, now in her first semester at MIT. Dad, got an A on my engineering midterm. Thanks for showing me that doing the right thing always pays off eventually. Marcus smiled and typed back, proud of you, kiddo. Keep changing the world. But the real change was happening closer to home. The Marcus Thompson Educational Initiative had awarded 47 scholarships in 6 months. Eleanor had used her influence to pressure 12 other companies to review their hiring practices. And somewhere in New York City, a homeless veteran named William sat in a job training program funded by Whitman Foundation grants, learning welding skills that would give him the second chance he'd never thought he'd get. Because Marcus had learned that sometimes the most important choice isn't the one that advances your own dreams. Sometimes it's the one that proves you're the kind of person who deserves to have those dreams come true. On a cold Tuesday evening, Marcus found himself at Penn Station again, waiting for a train home. He saw an elderly black woman sitting alone on a bench, looking confused and frightened, her hands shaking as she tried to read a medication bottle. Without hesitation, Marcus walked over and knelt beside the bench. Ma'am, are you okay? Do you need help? She looked up at him with grateful eyes, and Marcus understood that kindness wasn't just about one moment of choice. It was about becoming the kind of person who always made the same choice, over and over again, until the world started to look a little more like the place you wanted your daughter to inherit. The circle was complete, but the story was just beginning.
Join us to share meaningful stories by hitting the like and subscribe buttons. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell to start your day with profound lessons and heartfelt empathy.